I'd like to introduce you to Project One. This is your personal symbol. So you'll learn from this web page. You'll have all the details and sample imagery, etc., about this project. Let me start by going to some student examples first. So I'm going to jump over here. Here's 6 different students' personal symbols. Can you look at these and figure out what they represent? They're either hobbies or ideas or careers from these different students. So here we have technical writing. This is an artist and motorcycle biker. Here is a professional gamer, a people person, someone who's open-minded, and someone who's a puzzle. So obviously, well, I just took away 6 different ideas that you could have used. Sorry. But, it'll give you an idea of what we're after overall. And don't worry, there's plenty more ideas out there. Um, so don't worry about that. Why do I want you to learn to make these type of symbols? As well as a graphic designer, I think it's really important that you learn to master simplification. It's really going to help you in 2 things right away. One, logo design. Good logos are, and I'm going to show you some examples later, where they're simplified, they're stripped away from all their access and then their excess stuff, and then people remember them. And then interface design, UX, UI, app design, the interface, the icons, and it applies to GUI or software design as well. Very useful. I'll give you a couple examples. Here's some software I've designed for a company called Wristband. You can see that you have very limited space and very limited color palette, and yet you got to communicate complex ideas such as organizations, divisions, groups, geofences, etc. And so you have to learn to work with symbols. I did another one with even more limited. I mean, we didn't even have normal color palette for this project. This is limited to 6-bit colors. That's only like 5 colors, period. And they're all these oddly intense RGB, like these colors. But anyway, again, you're limited, and so you just have to make do. And so that's a skill that you need. And of course, think of good logos, Nike, Apple, etc. They're all coming down to simplified symbols. All right. I'd like to share a little presentation now. Goes along with this. And it's the whole concept of simplification. Paul Rand, who's a very famous graphic designer, particularly of the 50s, he said graphic design is so simple, that's what makes it complicated. In other words, it's really hard to make things simple. It's really easy to leave them complex, or far more complex than they need to be. So here's an interesting study. An Australian group went to some 3rd graders in Australia, these young students. They said, draw a logo. You got, 5 minutes. And these kids were able to whip out these logos. And why do I think they were able to do this? It's because the logos that they chose were simple, and of course repetition. They saw it over and over again. But they couldn't have done it if the logo was extremely complex. Interesting. I wonder, has any of the branding that you've been exposed to over and over again been pounded into your brain so much that you could just whip out the logos? Probably. So your goal is to remove excess information. Um, you know, you would do that for a logo, you do that for an icon, but in this case, very similar project. You're going to do that for something that represents you, a hobby, an interest, etc. I'm going to give you some examples of logos right now. These are made by Harry Murphy, a really famous designer from San Francisco in the 70s. So this is obviously housing. Um, I don't know how you could say it more simplistically. I mean, look, he has the door and the chimney be actually the same square. It represents the same thing at once. The negative space is a building just as the black is a house. So it's pretty incredible how he simplified that down. Here's some more of his work. Um, I don't know exactly what these are for. I think one's a dry cleaner. I think the other is a restaurant, but not sure. Um, he did a great one for a sporting good shop. So just, you know, think about this idea, this Harry Murphy, Paul Rand approach. If you're going to take a symbol or symbols and represent sporting goods, you know, skiing, soccer, football, archery, all this stuff, how would you put that into a symbol or set of symbols? All right. I hope you have something in your mind. Here's what he came up with, and I think it's very clever. Notice he just stuck to a circle every single time, but he was able to say, you know, across the board, baseball, volleyball, tennis, basketball, soccer, archery, bowling, even put football in there. Yeah, American football. It's a little odd because we're looking at it in a way we normally don't see it straight on. But if you look at it that way, it's a perfect circle. And so you could slip them all in there. So, kind of a clever approach and a good example of simplicity. Uh, there he is with his work, Harry Murphy. Okay, so I want you to learn, and you're going to do this through sketches again and again and again. You're going to try a little thumbnail sketch, a really small, like keep it an inch square, and then say, okay, I love cats, and how do I say that? And you're going to draw that, okay, and then simplify, and you're redraw it again and again, each time trying to remove information, and you're going to try to remove illustration and photorealistic imagery. So in our textbook, we have this diagram, and it shows everything from high abstraction down to photographic realistic imagery. In this case, we're thinking about the human eye. So we could represent it with a photograph very realistically, or we could abstract it down to just plain circles, so much so that people don't get it. What we're trying to do is hit right in the middle. We're trying to get to the level that's called a glyph, and where it's just a simplified picture. A lot of you will start out more down at this level, which is fine, and we're just going to keep pushing ourselves over here. Occasionally, we'll get too far simplified, and we'll have to come back. I kind of expanded this a little bit, put in different levels, all the levels that the book talks about, and showed a more detailed photograph to stylized to altered picture to illustration. And I want you to avoid this for now. I'm not against illustration. It has its place and its purpose. We're just in a course right now where we're trying to focus on the basic fundamentals of graphic design. So we're trying to aim more at this level, a simplified glyph, because it's quickly understandable. If we go too far, the idea has to be learned. This can remain clear, but it's still complex, too complex for the most cases to work as a corporate logo, etc. And so if I simplify, I just take out all the words and letter marks. Here we're just dealing with imagery. So again, we're trying to take your ideas, turn it into imagery, and we're trying to aim at this level, the glyph. Here's an example of a logo. This comes from Kroger. Kroger uses this on their gas stations. I pondered this for a while. I have a hunch what they're trying to represent. Obviously, this goes to this level, high abstraction. I think it's the lower 48 states. You know, if that's the case, this would be Florida, and this would be California, Washington. If I'm right. If I am right, they really have abstracted the U.S., but, it's a gas station. I don't know if it really matters. Yeah, and I found a post about it. Someone else was wondering, I don't know what this means. Anyway, um, this is a great book, Understanding Comics. And what he's talking about is when we take something complex down to the point of its bare bones minimal, this is when we get the icon. So we can represent a face with a simple circle, two dots, and a line. And that face can be expressive. It could be happy, sad, etc. So it's pretty amazing that our minds can take something that should be represented this way, but apply the same principles and ideas to that. So this we could recognize as a happy, well, this one's a mediocre person. Not happy, not sad, just kind of in between. But we can apply that and recognize that as a face. Pretty amazing. Corporations over time, you'll see that they tend to simplify. A lot of corporations back, say, 1920, 1880, their logos look like this, extremely complex. But logos over time become more simplified, and as they do, they have a greater punch, more impact. So it works better. Target, that's probably the most simplified target you could get. 3 rings or a dot and 2 rings. They could make their logo like this, but do they really need to? No. Okay, so I think you get the idea of what we're after here. So with that, let's go back to the web page. I'm going to encourage you to read through the objective, the purpose, why we're doing this. Here's my little chart, and added a star so you know what we're aiming for. Then the overview, and this is what I expect you to do, the research work. So I want you to complete 40 thumbnail sketches, and there's a concept sheet that you can download to help you do that, and there's some text you need to fill out. It's kind of a way to get started. One thing I don't want you to do is use existing symbols such as music notes, a cross, a $, a smiley face, etc. Anything that's a simplified, recognizable symbol, a letter, number, Instead, try to render your ideas as images and go from there. And in the end, we're going to render this image. The image will be a 5 by 5.5 by 5.5. The piece of paper it's going to be on is a 7.5 by 7.5. And it's going to be mounted to a black mat board. Don't worry, you got some time to work on this. Look at the syllabus overview. It shows you exactly when the due date is for the group that you're in. Otherwise, I would explain that right now. So there you go. That's the project outline. And then here you can download the 6 student examples I showed you. And you can download here the concept sheet, which does count towards your grade. So it's really important that you download this, complete this, and share this with me. In the end, this is what your work will be like. You'll have a black mat board. You'll have this white cardstock paper with your final design neatly rendered on that. This will be mounted onto that. On the back will be this 3 by 2 piece of paper that has your name, my name, the date, the name of the class on the back. And then either you'll send me a scan of this image, or you can just turn in a black and white copy of your final image. Okay, I think that keeps one half of the class going while I'll meet with the other class, half of the class, and talk about the syllabus in person, and then we'll switch roles the next day. So look forward to meeting all of you, and it's going to be complex. I might have some dates wrong, but I think we're going to have a good term anyway. We'll work this out. Thanks.